My name is Jimmy Gorecki, and welcome to the Independent Digital Symposium. Today's topic is brand architecture, and I'm with platinum selling artist Kyle
What's up,
and
y'all?
Mr. Manager right next to him, Nolan. Thank you guys for joining me today. I'm not going to come in this acting as if I know everything and anything about the music industry because I don't. So that's why I'm going to ask you guys the questions. Hopefully, we can give some game to some young, up and coming, hungry artists, and yeah, just have fun with it. So shit. All right. Let me jump right into this. Uh, these questions are cool for me to hear from you guys because I kind of feel like I was lucky enough to see when you guys started to see the growth, success on a lot of different levels. So it'll be interesting for me to hear from you guys how what your perspective of developing this whole thing was. So first question is, how does an artist figure out their own personal brand? I know it's a very broad question, but what can make them unique and stand out from other artists?
Um, I think it's different for everybody, but I would say that figuring out your personal brand, I think, starts with just identifying who you actually are. And if it's not who you truly are,
Yeah,
it's who are you going to pretend to be. You know what I mean? I think
got
that's how an
yeah,
artist start. That's the base level of it. Just talking about, okay, who are you actually? Yeah, or who are you going to pretend to be? Um,
yeah,
yeah, and then there's a bunch of other stuff. What do you think?
I think, and then it's the manager's job to kind of like mine that out of you a little bit,
Yeah.
And I always tell Kyle, we always just try to like find the things that make him unique and cool and then wrap a bow around it and put it in a pretty package and deliver it to the public. In hip hop, especially, you're a hip hop head and but it's like geographically, it like really matters. Like, and I think us being from Ventura, California, which is like a small beach town in Southern California, it's not a hip hop place to be from. But at some point, it's like, and I think it was Mac Miller really that kind of like turned me on to the fact that like you can kind of be from anywhere, even though Pittsburgh is like a metropolis and like a cool, like a cool urban place to be from. But just like him being from
yep,
Pittsburgh and repping it so hard made me think, shit, you can rep anywhere. And in fact, it's better you rep where you're from rather than try to like, if Kyle spent his whole career trying to be accepted by Los Angeles and the Los Angeles hip hop community, he might not be where he is, been doing something that wasn't true to him. So I think that like
exactly.
early on, just repping what he knew and where he grew up and shooting the videos in our backyard, like rather than like driving to LA to Venice Beach to like shoot a wannabe rap video, it's like it just and that it created context. And I think too, it might have been the through line that connected to him to like his audience all over the world, because people aren't all from New York City. They're not all from Queens or fucking wherever, Chicago. They're
Yeah,
from nowhere,
yeah,
USA, And I think Ventura has a lot of those where it's just like, this could be fucking anywhere. We're just in our backyard shooting these videos and, and maybe the audience related to that.
Yeah, you know what? I think too, like another cool thing is that like doing it in Ventura was just more unique. I noticed like trying to be as different as possible is like that's the thing about like somebody like Mac Miller in Pittsburgh. Like even if it is like a metropolis, it's like not any of the places we're used to. We know nothing about it. So we can almost take a
yeah,
place like Ventura and take that kind of background and make it as magical or as different as we wanted to, instead of like when you're from, if you're like doing the LA thing, if you're doing the New York thing, there's only one way to do it and we've seen it done a million times before.
yeah,
You feel me? Whereas like talking about Ventura and like shooting everything there and repping it super hard and me jumping on a boogie board, like those are all things you've never seen a rapper do before.
yeah.
And all we had to do is just look at where we really lived and be like, oh, this is really us. Let's just, put this out there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I think like your personal brand, like who you are as a person is the most vital thing to putting in your music. And I always tell that to any kid that ever asks me advice on, like, yeah, I know I'm good. And like, I'm just trying, like, how do I get on? And I just always tell them like, yeah, like similar to like what Nolan's talking about. if you're trying to just do what everybody else is doing in your music, you know, it's a crazy uphill battle. You have to talk about the things that are completely unique to yourself and just rap about those. And that's how, you know, I guess that if that's the question, like putting your own personal brand into your music is like your own personal things you're into, what you like, what you grew up watching. Like when you're honest about those things, that's how you're going to be able to make the most
let me ask you a
music.
question, and this is an outsider's perspective. You always hear these horror stories about you have the artist and they have what they're good at, and then you get other powers that be that like to come in and like lead you in a certain direction. That you hear these horror stories that is 9 times out of 10 so far from where the artist actually wants to go.
Yeah.
How does one remain true to themselves to avoid that aside of the political part of it, you know?
Yeah, you know what? That horror story of the political part really is like super simple to explain. You know, people make it seem this crazy thing that you could make movies about, and like, you know, this evil guy comes in and is like, your name is this now or whatever, you know, and tries to give you a whole new identity. I think it's like people will try to, in the music business people will try to shape an artist after something they've seen work before. You know what I mean? It's almost like any other business. You'll try to take an artist and you think that they could be like this artist, so let's do what that person does, or let's try and make it more commercial. And sometimes the artists themselves will try and do the same thing to like chase like success, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's like just you get trapped into that by seeing what's working and trying to replicate it, whether it's like the business side of things, they're trying to make you dress a certain way so you can appeal to, you know, like, and or whether it's the artists themselves trying to make a sound that they feel like is more popular. You know, that's how you can sort of dilute who you actually are, you know, and you definitely have to check in with yourself like periodically to let yourself know, like, you know, don't chase trends. You have to just maintain like being an individual, because rap is so trendy. Like trends really come and go and work, and you'll want to hop on them to go too. And I think that's probably what that horror story of the business of what you're talking about to do.
Right. And there's also this other, like, as the industry has changed over the last decade, it's like now record labels aren't taking massive investment risks on things that aren't proving to be successes already. So like,
Gotcha.
For example, like, I think that we didn't have that pressure for Kyle because we had time to define and create his brand way prior to us being with a record label. Now, if you're just an artist in the 90s and you have a demo tape and you bring it to an A&R and he's like, yo, this is really dope, but you have no fan base, you have no brand identity, and then they're like, yo, Jimmy, we think you need to wear the fucking Philly fitted and shit, and you need to dress like this
and be from Philly
and do this, and then you're like, yo, that might not be true to me. So I think that nowadays the narrative is way different, because for us, we had to solve the thing ourselves, and we got to define it ourselves. Fashion and music is trendy, hip hop is trendy, fashion is obviously super trendy, and I think it's interesting because watching Kyle's evolution with his fashion shit is always like, as being more of like a streetwear kid myself, I always kind of wanted to nudge Kyle to be like a little more of like a fashion kid. But the thing is like, and it like now I think his fashion and his style has gone leaps and bounds, but that's because he's invested himself into learning and caring about it. And he found a niche with like the Japanese shit that that like speaks to you even via your like childhood of being passionate about anime.
Yeah, and that's what I have to say. Funny is that was one of the things like me and Nolan actually would like butt heads on in the beginning, is like Nolan knowing a bunch of like sick ass clothes and me just like, nah, that's some sick ass clothes. I don't do that. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna cut you off. That's a good question. You've got a sound. You did the whole EP with a producer that's so far from what you've done.
Yeah.
How does something, when people do make audibles and changes like that as musicians, how does that resonate? Like can you make those hard lefts, or is that completely alienating who you've already built,
I do it all the time. I actually like doing it now. And I think like, it's just me growing back to like, even what you were saying about the fashion thing. Like, yeah, when I started to respect fashion when I understood, oh, it's just like a really like intense way of like expressing yourself. And like some of those things like Capital and other brands like that spoke to me because of probably, yeah, my love of like a bunch of Japanese culture and shit like that. So taking hard lefts and stuff, if you're re-inspired by something, you know what I mean? And you want to make music like this now and you want to dress like this now and you want to change it all up, I think is, for me as an artist, is super exciting and super tight. For you as a manager, it could be scary. You know what I mean? It's like, yo, Nolan, I'm about to just make EDM music, bro. And I'm about to just get a mohawk. That's a new vibe. And then you would have to think about how you incorporate that into what we were doing before.
Right. It's such an interesting topic because like, I noticed that like what inspires Kyle the most in music a lot of times is not his most recent success. It's his idea of creating a new sound or a new genre and like innovating. And so as a manager, we've talked about this a bunch. We're like, you know, you could just go make 10 I Spies, you know, but like at the end of the day, like in order, like the music product is essentially our business and that's essentially what we're selling. But like, he has to make that music and he's not going to want to make the music that he doesn't want to make for whatever fucking reason. Now, then when you put the music out, there's obviously the call and response and whether your fans like it or react to it or whatever. Right. And that obviously is a really good indicator on whether it's a success or not. But at the end of the day, I think that it's really just about, you know, to me, I'm always like, do what you do and then let's figure out how to package it after the fact.
Yeah. Have you guys had those records where you're like, you put them out and then you do the scroll through Twitter and people are like, yo, this is completely like not where I've grown with you.
Yeah, you know what's funny is for me, it's like I've actually had like I've changed sound direction so many times throughout my like career, and you wouldn't think that because, you know, if you weren't like a real Kyle fan, but like I already have that issue a little bit because I really make like true blue ass R&B songs sometimes that are just like pure R&B music, or like a lot of my very early stuff was like super just like backpack kind of like rapping for 3 minutes kind of vibe, you know? And then I've made straight up EDM songs with like Martin Solveig and like straight up pop songs. Like one of my most popular songs is called When Can We? And it's like as pop as a pop song can get, you know? And then like I also have a large fan base of like SoundCloud sort of trap people for making I Spy with Lil Yachty. And it's like, at this point, the Kyle pie of music listeners is like very, it's all over the place. Yeah. So like I'll drop a song that you would expect to be the most Kyle song. And it's like, I'll have a whole legion of like Kyle R&B fans who are like, man, what is this, man? I can't believe you changed, dog. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. And it's like,
over him.
Yeah. So like I've had music that I think is the most reactive to my fans that is the least reactive. And I've had music that I would think is the least reactive to my fans be the most reactive. So it's like at this point, and it's probably because of like the artists that I admire the most, like people like Kid Cudi and stuff. But at this point, I feel like I'm just an artist making songs. And if you appreciate this painting, that's dope. You can buy this one, put it in your house. And then if I make another painting that you don't like, you know, that one's not necessarily like for you. And I think being a fan of an artist is really just about being a fan of them and what it is that they're deciding to do. But it doesn't mean you necessarily have to be a fan of every single item they create. You know?
Yeah. All right. So this is a good question for both you guys. It feels like the connectivity of the internet and stuff has done numbers to level out the playing field for up and coming artists and creatives in general. For you guys, what channels and tools are there available that you guys you think can help promote an artist's way to, you know, just to overall build their optics and to connect with more people?
Unfortunately, TikTok.
Yeah, I'm about to say we we were just talking about that a second ago, but randomly as we're sitting here, I kind of thought of something different. I think there's new ways to promote yourself constantly coming out. And there's so many of them now that I think you actually just have to decide in what way are you trying to promote yourself? Because if you're trying to blow up and become like an overnight celebrity, you definitely have to promote yourself on TikTok. And you don't need to do anything cool and like tasteful or anything. You just need to get on there and do like a really dumb dance. And maybe you'll have the #1 song in the world. Like it really is like that. But you could also take the time to try and promote yourself in like, more of a way that just builds your audience small at a time. And you're not doing TikTok things, but you're probably not going to have a super massive song either. You might have a cult following. You might be able to do big shows. You might have the situation where you just sell insane amount of merch. Like I know a bunch of different artists that are cracking in different respects because of where they spend the most time promoting themselves. People who every single music video they drop is crazy might have a really strong YouTube following or a strong merchandise game because you know more about them visually. People who every song they drop is going up on TikTok probably have way more streams. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like different avenues nowadays.
Where do you guys go when the two of you don't connect on what you think might be a good vision or a good outlet or a good rollout?
That's a great question. I feel like what happens is we end up having like a long ass conversation. I don't think it ever comes down to rock, paper, scissors. I think we talk about something until we're both like, we couldn't talk about that subject ever, ever, ever again. You know what I mean? We talk about it for probably hours on end, and then we talk about it the next day for some more hours. And it's like really just conversating and communicating both of our like opinions on it and both of our like, fears of why it would work or the other person's feeling of why it would work, and we sort of balance that out, and then you usually get left with like a very kind of like a very non-biased like truth of something, and then we make a decision from there, and it usually ends up like it's like, nah, but let's just do it. Let's just do it and see what happens.
Yeah, I try to like, it's funny because early on in Kyle's career, I remember myself being like super bullish on like, it's got to go this way. Like I had this super specific vision for it, and the fact that like we hadn't really had any like commercial success or really any financial success, it was one of those things where like I felt like everything was fucking life or death. Like this music video, it has to look like this and feel like this, and fucking I used to be in the edit. I used to direct the video and edit the video and fucking like I try to empower Kyle to make literally the best decision for himself, even if I feel like it's potentially not the best decision. But I really like, and I want to do that even, and I know obviously I even probably fall short of that, but I that's what I really want to do. It's just like, here's the pros and cons. This is what I think. And then at the end of the day, like Kyle's also so good at using the people around him and like, cause he doesn't have to do that. You know what I mean? It's like, this is his business. It's like, it needs to go however he wants it to go. But I think he does. And I think he doesn't even usually have to ask, cause I'm going to tell him what the fuck I think about it for what it's worth. But yeah, it's good. I feel empowered, and him empowering me in that space keeps me so engaged to like want to fucking help and want him to win on such a massive level, because I feel like my opinion is heard. And I think that's something that artists shouldn't take for granted. Like you do have to fucking blaze your trail, and you need to do what's true to you, but it's so important to make the people on your team feel empowered, because we're humans too. We're sensitive creatures. And if our job is to work on something fucking every day for a person, but they don't really give we're going to get burnt out. Eventually we're just going to stop caring. We're going to be like, dude, my opinion doesn't matter here. Like I'll work for you. I'll help you. But like, I'm not going to be passionate about it. I'm not going to give a shit,
Yeah. I think, and for me, I feel like maturity wise, like once you grow, the more and more you grow up, you kind of like have to realize that, you like for me, like I've always definitely want to take in everybody's opinion, because if not, like, what the hell is anybody really doing there, you know?
Yeah.
And so when it comes to making decisions, like, I've learned, like, you know, you want to vet everything all the way out, and then at the end of the day, you want to make the decision that feels still the most true to you, you know? But instead of just being like, nah, this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to do it, I like to talk about it to really see other people's opinions. And then you got to end up just making the best decision because that you feel. Because what you don't want to do is take somebody else's decision that you don't necessarily believe in, and then whether it works, whether they're right or wrong, then you have some sort of like feeling towards that person. You know what I mean? You want to like be the one to make a decision. That way, whatever happens, you're like, well, okay, I did that myself. You know what I mean?
You guys, there was a gang of audience questions, but you guys really answered them all collectively together. The biggest one, and I think you guys probably hear this one a billion times, is just staying on brand. Like, is that something that you guys have to make a conscious effort on regularly, or is it just internally you already know what it is with you guys? You've been doing this long enough, you know what feels good and what doesn't feel good, and what is synonymous with what you guys have done since day one.
Yeah, I'll start with it, and I think you can finish it because it leads into it. I think like the one things that we have built from the brand, I feel like all start just like, or the brand of me as an artist, like the brand of the collective and shit is like a little bigger, but I think the brand of me as an artist, like all starts from just a couple core things that I believe in and I've always wanted to do, you know, whether it's like always trying to being like, I feel like one of the first artists to be on some overtly positive, like happy music kind of vibe, I think is something that's there. And I basically think as long as I don't change as a person, then the job of Nolan of trying to repackage that in new, fresh ways every single time doesn't necessarily change. Like, I think staying on brand for me is just remaining who I actually am, you know, because that's like my half of it essentially. And then trying to do things that aren't like kind of counterintuitive. You know, if I'm supposed to be like, make the world a better place and like smile kind of thing. Like if I go through a gangster phase, like, you know, that's probably weird. That probably doesn't necessarily make sense.
I was acting really tough this past week or so.
Yeah, Kyle's been tough on this last album, bro. What happened? Like, yeah.
Well, and you know, the one thing I think that's just how social media has really opened up a lot of things is you don't want to like build yourself a coffin of a brand where you are like a slave to this brand, like that you feel like, oh, I don't want to do that because it's not on brand. Like you know, as humans, we're really versatile creatures. We grow, we learn, we adapt. And so I think you want to leave it open-ended, because I also think that that's like it's evolution. And you see artists whose brand doesn't evolve and it dies because it's like, it was really cool in 2014, but it's like you're still doing the same things you were doing then, and it's just not interesting anymore. I honestly feel like we watched how fast Kanye evolved and adapted, and every next step kind of made sense based on the last. You know what I mean? You were kind of like, oh, he's doing you know what I mean? Even when he does take like hard lefts and do things. And I think because that's so popular in the industry, you gotta, you know, you don't, like I said, you just don't want to nail yourself to a certain brand that like doesn't allow you to evolve, you know, because eventually like people will get bored of it. You know, they're like, well, that album cover looked like your last album cover and that sounded like your last thing. And I think it's tough, man, because trying to be unique, but at the same time be on trend and innovate, but bring your audience along.
It's weird.
There's a lot of moving parts. But I think that honestly, it's about freaking doing it with people that you love, man. That's what it's about. It's about doing it with your people and growing, you know?
Yeah, growing. And I think like just to, you know what I mean? Thank you, man. Bring it in. Come on. You know, and I think also like, yeah, like what you're saying, like, and just not being, you know, I think people will get tired of you if you just look like you don't kind of know where you want to go with it or whatever. You know, I think when you make a solid decision on this is where this brand is going next, I feel like it's like a confidence thing. You know what I mean? Like even probably from a fashion sense, like if your brand is deciding we're going to do something like this now, like if it's a confident move, I feel like people will go with you. But if you're like kind of being uneasy about what it is you want to do next, I feel like that's when people will lose faith in you. You know, and I think somebody like Kanye is a perfect example of that, because whenever he does something different, it's doing this whole thing. Like, we're not going to skim on it and try to baby step you along. And I think there's other artists, you know, I'm not going to say any name or anything like that, but I think they kind of want to change or kind of want to do something different. And it's always weird, you know, it's not tight.
Right.
So I think it's like just being confident in those and where you're going next with the brand, you know, is important.
Well, shit, man. I think that was the majority of the questions, man. I will say it's been amazing watching you guys from what I think was pretty early on to seeing the different levels of success, and even personally have, you know, you've got records that like my daughter sings, you know, like we'll be in the car and she knows the words. Those are amazing achievements, man. So congratulations to you guys, and fuck, man, I wish you guys the best getting through this crazy year and all the craziness that we're living through. And I wish you guys nothing but continued success with everything moving forward. So,
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, man,
so
thank you.
glad
Same
to
here, bro.
be part of the independent digital symposium on brand architecture. Now, thank you guys. Have a good afternoon. All right.
You too.
Me too.